Earnings disappoint, revenues come in below expectations, companies cut growth forecasts for the future. These are some of the words that have been used in headlines of news media to describe the performance of IT companies for the quarter ended September this year. How exactly has the information technology industry performed? And what does this mean for jobs in the sector that currently employs about 5.4 million people? Hello and welcome back to Business Matters at the Hindu with me, Bharat Kumar. Over the past few days, the biggies in the information technology sector in India announced their results for the quarter ended September. TCS, Infosys, Wipro, HCL Tech. The picture that they paint seems to be gloomy for the near future. The Hindu in a press conference asked CEO and MD of TCS, Mr. K. Krithivasan, as to whether challenges to client spending continued, and this is what he had to say. It is obvious, because of the uncertainty, older projects getting optimized, with some of them getting paused. This results in muted or moderated premium. In the same breath, while highlighting some deal wins, Infosys chief Mr. Salil Parekh acknowledged that the macroeconomic environment was fraught with uncertainty. It's interesting how some patterns and trends have switched or flipped from the time of the pandemic. Now, IT companies are able to use some cost levers and protect somewhat their profit margins. But they have belied expectations when it comes to revenue growth. It was sort of the opposite in the period referred to, that is during the pandemic. Now, the results announcements talk about what has happened in the past. It's important. But what is even more critical is what companies think when they hear from clients, what they think the future will be, especially the near-term future. TCS does not give estimates of future performance, but in an interview to Business Line, Mr. Krithivasan said that it was going to be difficult to achieve double-digit growth this year ending March 2024. And as you see from the chart on your screens, Infosys and HCL Tech revised their growth estimates for the year downwards for revenues. Infosys went down from an estimate of about 1 to 3.5% growth to 1 to 2.5%. And HCL Tech, from what it estimated to be 6 to 8%, is now down to 5 to 6%. Every quarter, Wipro does give estimates for what is revenue growth for the IT services segment would look like, but it doesn't give for the whole year. In this instance, it said that the revenue growth for the December quarter compared with the immediately preceding quarter, which is the September quarter, that growth wouldn't be growth, but would be a contraction of about 1.5 to 3.5%. In an article, Business Line analyst Hari Viswanath points out that North America as a region accounts for up to 60% of revenues for the Indian IT services industry. And taken together with Europe, that comes to about 85%. Right now, the outlook for economies in the West, Europe and North America all put together, the outlook for economies there is pretty gloomy. And unless economies there start looking up, a recovery for the Indian IT services industry is going to take time. Now we come to the crux of this issue for this episode. How has financial performance impacted jobs addition in this industry? In line with performance, jobs addition has been muted. For example, for the top 4 IT firms, net headcount addition has come down by 20,000, which means they may have gone ahead and recruited employees, but they allowed more employees to leave than join. The chart on your screen shows Infosys losing the most, with TCS coming up second. This is in the second column of the chart. You'll also have to remember that the numbers here form a very small portion of their overall employment figures. But nevertheless, that the companies have not added employee headcount like they did during the frenzy of the pandemic, that is the point to take note of. Also note in the last 2 columns of this chart that attrition levels have come down. The trend is obvious. The market is not that hot for employees, so their willingness to leave employment in one firm for another has declined. And the ones to be most affected by this? Freshers from colleges who are not yet part of this IT ecosystem. As has happened several times in the past when the industry has been hit by slowdowns, companies would be unwilling to visit campuses to recruit freshers. Here's some context. Generally, IT services firms have a bench strength of manpower. Think of it as a reserve force. When the times are good, the bench is slightly bloated, because you do want to have manpower that you can quickly use to populate projects. Sometimes a project may come your way suddenly. But when a slowdown hits, that bench tends to go down in size because companies say, look, let me make use of people on the bench for projects that we currently have. Let me not go out and recruit, be it lateral hires from other companies or be they freshers from colleges. In other words, utilization of existing manpower goes up. Infosys, for example, has said that it would not visit campuses for fresher hiring at the moment. Wipro too said it would not visit campuses till it onboarded all freshers to whom it has made offers so far. Wipro saw its utilization improve to 84.5% from 83.7% in the immediately preceding quarter. Now that brings us to the final point. What is unstated and obvious is that significant salary increments would be highly unlikely this year. We will end this episode around this point that we discussed, significant salary increments, because there is concern in some quarters that a slowdown in wage hikes or nil wage hikes this year by the IT industry would actually impact pan-India consumer spending. This never used to be a point of concern years earlier, but now it is. You know why? You look at all the listed companies on the BSE. If you look at the all-cap BSE index, the salary and expenses of all listed companies comes to a certain amount, but 31% of that figure is contributed to by the Indian IT service industry. So imagine if there is a slowdown in increments or nil increments in that sector, it will have a ripple effect because the industry employs 5.4 million people. And you'll have to remember that for every job that is there or is created by the Indian IT service industry, there is a trickle-down effect. If you're somebody with 10, 15 years of experience, having a nice, handsome salary in the IT service industry, you go have a nice dinner at a restaurant, partially a job is created there at the restaurant for people to service you. You go on a vacation. So places of tourism start creating healthy jobs. So there is a ripple effect. And when there is a slowdown in wage hikes or nil hikes at all, then it tends to have a telling effect. But so far there is no evidence of any drastic change on that front. But maybe there are signs here and there of things to come. For example, if you observe the results of FMCG companies, fast-moving consumer goods, they seem to have seen better growth in urban areas than in rural. So there is that divide. But unless we get more data, you can't say anything conclusively. If we have to take note of all of these facts and sum up in one sentence, it would have to be the impact that financial performance has on hiring, especially fresher hiring. As Krishna Vij, business head of IT staffing at TeamLease, told Business Line, it is anticipated that there will be a substantial reduction of 40 to 50% in the overall intake of freshers across the IT sector. This reduction is expected to affect the last year's batch and the current year's batch. And here's a nugget from history in our Did You Know section as usual. Did you know that TCS, India's oldest software services firm, won its first ever overseas project from an electric company in Iran in 1971? TCS was founded in 1968. And in 1972, it earned $24,000 for a project it did for a company in Detroit. The Tata Group says it was the first recorded instance of an offshore project and possibly the beginning of the Indian IT services industry. And for the quiz question this week, we'll stick with history from TCS. What was TCS's main function or project at the time that its first ever CEO was brought in, Mr. Fakir Chand Kohli? He was brought in from a group company to head TCS. And here's the answer to last week's question, which was, what was the Canton system in the context of early trade that the West had with China? The Canton system was a set of regulations that the Qing dynasty in China used to control foreign trade with from 1757 to 1842. The system was designed to limit contact between Chinese society and foreign merchants. And it required all foreign trade to be conducted in the southern part of Canton with authorized Chinese merchants. It also used to confine foreigners to a small commercial district in Canton called the factories. The system was not the result of treaty or diplomatic restrictions. Instead, it was a unilateral Chinese policy towards foreign trade and traders. The system reflected the strength of the Chinese state at the height of this dynasty, which is between 1644 to 1911. As always, as we wind down, we seek your comments on this topic. Have you experienced, or has anybody in your family experienced, the slowdown in the IT industry? Be it unavailability of jobs or a slowdown in increment pace or whatever. We'd love to hear from you. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and importantly, click on the bell icon. Till we meet again, have a lovely week ahead.